Hall effect switches. They've been around for a long time, as seen by the old Honeywell keyboards, but they haven't been all too popular outside vintage keyboard users until Wooting made one a couple years back. And after it became popular in the OS community, Wooting made a keypad called this. I'm not saying that. Terrible name aside, this made the Hall effect switches easier to get and more accessible to OS players. Here's my problem. I'm not paying that much for 3 keys. And the sale pad is still too much, and as of this really old script, doesn't exist. But where am I to get a Hall effect keypad that I can fully customize with support of up to 3 Hall effect keys and room for upgrading it down the line? Man, this keyboard sucks. Yeah, I'll make my own. 3 keys. Yeah. Yeah, key there. Yeah. Done. And before you ask, yes, it has rapid trigger. The supplies needed are soldering iron, solder, flux, thin wires, hot glue, 49E Hall effect sensors, M2 screws, a Raspberry Pi Pico, and access to a 3D printer, if you don't want to DIY the case. When it comes to this keypad, you have an option between 2 or 3 keys. For this one, I'll use 3. Next up is the case. For this part, I made a case that will be available in the description, but if you want to make your own case, that should work too. After the case is done, you should be ready to mount the sensors. So mount the sensors however you feel need, making sure the bevel side is facing towards the magnet of the switch. For this one, I used hot glue, but the 3D printed mounts I will put in the description. Next up, we'll be soldering the sensors to the Pico. Here's the wiring diagram where the red and black are for voltage in and out, and the blue are for the analog inputs. This part you might want to pause and use as a guide for the wiring. Once the wiring is done, you are now ready to flash the Pico. For flashing the Pico, plug it into the computer and drag and drop the appropriate 2 or 3 key firmware. If you have the latest version, the sensors will automatically calibrate. However, if you have issues with the auto calibration, you may need to reflash the Pico with an older firmware. If you are manually calibrating, I use Arduino IDE, but Minitool will also work. So select the device, select any board, and then click Tools and Serial Monitor. Once in Serial Monitor, these are the commands you use for calibrating the sensor, making sure to calibrate both the up and down positions. Once calibrated, these are the commands for tinkering with the settings, noting the values are speaking in hundredths of a millimeter. The current settings on my keypad are this, and once you are done with your tinkering, use this command and save, and your keypad is done. As you can see, the keypad definitely works, but there's a lot more you can do with it. Outside of the analog keys, you have support for up to 26 more digital keys. While you figure out what you want to do with your keypad, I'll make sure to set some deadlines for my videos.